You've probably heard of the Rosetta Stone. It's one of the most famous objects in the British Museum, but what actually is it? When was it found and why is it important? Who cracked the code? In this video, we'll discuss everything to understand this amazing stone that's pretty mysterious. The stone is a tablet of black rock called granodiorite. It is part of a larger inscribed stone that would have stood some 2 meters high. The top part of the stone has broken off at an angle, in line with a band of pink granite, whose crystalline structure glints a little in the light. The back of the Rosetta Stone is rough, where it has been cut into shape, but the front face is smooth and crammed with text. It has a message carved into it, written in 3 types of writing. It was an important clue that helped experts learn to read Egyptian hieroglyphs, a writing system that used pictures as signs. The writing on the stone is an official message called a decree about the king, Ptolemy V, R204-181 BC. The decree was copied onto large stone slabs called stelae, which were put in every temple in Egypt. It says that the priests of a temple in Memphis, in Egypt, supported the king. The Rosetta Stone is one of these copies, so not particularly important in its own right. The important thing for us is that the decree is inscribed 3 times in hieroglyphs suitable for a priestly decree. Demotic, the cursive Egyptian script used for daily purposes, meaning language of the people, and Ancient Greek, the language of the administration. The rulers of Egypt at this point were Greco-Macedonian after Alexander the Great's conquest. Soon after the end of the 4th century CE, when hieroglyphs had gone out of use, the knowledge of how to read and write them disappeared. In the early years of the 19th century, some 1400 years later, scholars were able to use the Greek inscription on this stone as the key to decipher them. The importance of this to Egyptology is immense. When it was discovered, nobody knew how to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Because the inscriptions say the same thing in 3 different scripts, and scholars could still read ancient Greek, the Rosetta Stone became a valuable key to deciphering the hieroglyphs. Thomas Young, an English physicist, was the first to show that some of the hieroglyphs on the Rosetta Stone wrote the sounds of a royal name, that of Ptolemy. The French scholar Jean-François Champollion then realized that hieroglyphs recorded the sound of the Egyptian language and laid the foundations of our knowledge of ancient Egyptian language and culture. But when it was found? It was all started in 1799, during Napoleon's invasion of Egypt. A French soldier discovers a black basalt stone that was inscribed with writing. It was to change history and allow the modern world to understand the language and the world of ancient Egypt. The stone was found north of Rosetta. It contains several languages. They include Greek and 2 versions of Egyptian. In 205 BC, Ptolemy V succeeded to the throne while still a young child. The dynasty's grip on power was fragile, following the troubled reign of his ineffective father Ptolemy IV. Ptolemy V, in order to maintain his rule, had to strike a bargain with Egypt's priests, who still held a lot of influence in the country. The result of this was a proclamation in 196 BC written by the priests that supported the young king's rule but included several concessions to the priestly class. Versions of this proclamation were installed in several Egyptian temple complexes, one of which survives today as the Rosetta Stone. What's the relation of Egyptian stone with the British world? Let's uncover this. In 1798, when Napoleon quickly defeated the Mamelukes, the ruling class in the country is in a battle. This was known as the Battle of the Pyramids. The French quickly occupied the country. Napoleon saw himself as an enlightened man, and he brought many scholars and scientists with him. He ordered them to seize everything of cultural or historical significance and take them back to France for study. Pierre Bouchard understood this order, and he knew he had to alert Napoleon when he found the basalt stone with its weird writings. However, it was not brought back to France as Napoleon had intended. Bonaparte returned to France in 1800 in order to fight the Allies in Italy. He left behind him some 40,000 men in Egypt. When the British defeated the French in 1801 after the Battle of the Nile, they then invaded the country and quickly overpowered the remaining French forces. Then they confiscated the Black Stone with the 3 scripts, and they brought it back to London. On Napoleon's defeat, the stone became the property of the British under the terms of the Treaty of Alexandria, 1801, along with other antiquities that the French had found. The Rosetta Stone has been exhibited in the British Museum since 1802 with only one break. Towards the end of the First World War in 1917, when the museum was concerned about heavy bombing in London, they moved it to safety along with other portable, important objects. The Rosetta Stone spent the next 2 years in a station on the Postal Tube Railway, 50 feet below the ground at Holborn. Latest research. Work on the stone now focused on a fuller understanding of the texts and their contexts by comparing the three versions with one another. In 1824, classical scholar Antoine-Jean Letron promised to prepare a new literal translation of the Greek text for Champollion's use. Champollion, in return, promised an analysis of all the points at which the three texts seemed to differ. Following Champollion's sudden death in 1832, his draft of this analysis could not be found, and Letron's work stalled. François Salvolini, Champollion's former student and assistant, died in 1838, and this analysis and other missing drafts were found among his papers. This discovery incidentally demonstrated that Salvolini's own publication on the stone, published in 1837, was plagiarism. Letron was at last able to complete his commentary on the Greek text and his new French translation of it, which appeared in 1841. During the early 1850s, German Egyptologists Heinrich Brugsch and Max Uellermann produced revised Latin translations based on the Demotic and hieroglyphic texts. The first English translation followed in 1858, the work of 3 members of the Philomathian Society at the University of Pennsylvania. Whether one of the 3 texts was the standard version, from which the other 2 were originally translated, is a question that has remained controversial. Letron attempted to show in 1841 that the Greek version, the product of the Egyptian government under the Macedonian Ptolemies, was the original. Among recent authors, John Ray has stated that the hieroglyphs were the most important of the scripts on the stone. They were there for the gods to read, and the more learned of their priesthood. Philippe Deschamps and Heinz Josef Thiessen have argued that all 3 versions were composed simultaneously, while Stephen Quirk sees in the decree an intricate coalescence of 3 vital textual traditions. Richard Parkinson points out that the hieroglyphic version strays from archaic formalism and occasionally lapses into language closer to that of the Demotic register that the priests more commonly used in everyday life. The fact that the 3 versions cannot be matched word for word helps to explain why the decipherment has been more difficult than originally expected, especially for those original scholars who were expecting an exact bilingual key to Egyptian hieroglyphs. Do you have ever seen Rosetta Stone in real life? Share your amazing memorable thoughts in comments. Now that's all about today's video. If you like this video, thumbs up and subscribe our channel to know more about mysterious historical content. Thanks for watching.